This is eternal human spirit, where every story proves why humanity never breaks.
The mockery begins. The great council chamber was filled with voices, 1,000 alien tongues echoing under the shining glass roof. They gathered from every corner of the galaxy, each species proud of its history and strength. Yet tonight, the talk was not of themselves, but of one race they all despised, humanity. A massive alien with skin like iron slammed his hand on the table. His voice was deep, filled with laughter. Humans, they call themselves warriors, but they are fragile. Their bones break like dry sticks. Their skin burns in the sun. They cannot even breathe freely without their machines. The crowd burst into laughter. Another alien, tall and thin with glowing eyes, raised a holoscreen. It displayed images of humans retreating from battlefields, ships destroyed, colonies burning. Look at them running, always running. They think they are clever, but in truth, they are weak prey. More laughter filled the chamber, cruel and endless. Hidden in the corner, standing alone, was a single human, Captain Daniel. His uniform was worn, the colors faded, but his posture was unbroken. He listened without a word, his eyes calm, his face unreadable. He was the only human allowed inside this hall, and to the aliens he was nothing more than a relic. The mocking continued. One alien mimicked the way humans walked, stumbling as if broken. The crowd howled. In amusement, another described humans as parasites who survived by begging from stronger species. Even their wars, one said, are fought with desperation, not courage. They bleed too easily, they die too quickly, they are not soldiers, they are children with weapons. The words cut deep, but Daniel did not move. His silence puzzled. Some aliens. They expected anger. They wanted him to shout, to defend his kind, but he only stood with arms folded, watching, waiting. Why is he even here? One alien sneered, pointing at him. Does he enjoy hearing the truth? Or is he too broken to answer? The crowd laughed again. The air shook with the sound of their scorn. Then the elder of the council, a towering alien with silver horns, raised his hand for silence. The room obeyed. His voice was cold. The war is coming, and every species must decide where they stand. But humanity, what place do they have? They cannot fight, they cannot endure. Their time is finished. He pointed at Daniel. Tell us, human, why should we see your race as anything but weak? The chamber turned quiet. Every eye, every glowing gaze, was fixed on the lone human soldier. Daniel finally moved. He stepped forward into the light. His boots echoed against the polished floor. His shadow stretched long across the chamber. He looked small compared to the towering aliens, but his presence carried weight. He did not raise his voice. His words were steady. You laugh at humanity because you do not understand us. You think weakness is measured by muscle and bone. You think strength is only power of the body, but you are wrong. The aliens shifted. Some smirked, others frowned. Daniel continued. Yes, we bleed. Yes, we fall. But when we fall, we rise again. When we are broken, we rebuild. When we are outnumbered, we fight harder. That is who we are. A murmur spread across the chamber. A few aliens exchanged glances, but many still laughed, mocking him. Fine words, one sneered, but words are air. Show us proof, or remain silent forever. Daniel's jaw tightened. His mind replayed the faces of soldiers he had fought beside, friends buried in unmarked graves, battles won against impossible odds. His silence turned heavy, a silence that carried memory, pain, and defiance. Finally, he spoke again, his voice lower, stronger. You will have proof, not in words, but in what comes next. Mock us if you wish. But soon you will see why humanity endures. The chamber fell into an uneasy hush. The laughter faded. Some aliens still smirked, but others, for the first time, felt a chill. The human had not shouted, he had not begged, yet his calm promise left a mark. The elder leaned back, his silver eyes narrowing. He studied Daniel for a long moment, then said slowly, "We shall see, human. We shall see if your kind has anything more than empty pride." The council resumed its noise, the voices rising once again in laughter and doubt. But somewhere in the chamber, curiosity began to stir, and as Captain Daniel stood silently under the council's gaze, a storm of destiny was already forming, unseen but unstoppable. The soldiers passed. The council chamber's mocking laughter echoed in Captain Daniel's ears long after the session ended. But his heart was not stirred by anger. It was stirred by memory, by the countless shadows of the past that walked beside him, reminding him who he was and what humanity had endured. He stepped outside the hall into the cold night air of the alien city, its sky glowing with twin moons, and for a moment he let his eyes close, allowing the flood of memories to return. Daniel had not always been a soldier. He was once a boy running across the ruined streets of Earth, chasing after scraps of food when his city was bombed during the first invasion. The sky had been filled with fire, the ground shaking as alien warships descended. His father was gone in the first strike, his mother buried under rubble 2 days. Later, Daniel was left with nothing but the desperate will to survive. He learned then what it meant to endure, not because he was strong, but because he had no choice. At 16, he joined the remnants of Earth's defense forces, a ragged group of fighters armed with broken weapons and burning resolve. He had trained under harsh commanders who told him survival was victory and sacrifice was duty. By 18, he was already fighting on the front lines of the asteroid colonies. Where humans were hunted like vermin, Daniel became a shadow in the war, not famous, not celebrated, but feared by enemies who underestimated him. He was the kind of soldier who never gave up, even when surrounded, even when hope seemed lost. Night, on a barren moon where the atmosphere was thin and the ground cracked like broken glass. Daniel led a squad of only 10 humans against an alien platoon of 50. The aliens were stronger, armed with plasma rifles and armored hides, while Daniel's squad had little more than scavenged rifles and grit. They fought through the night, each man falling one by one until only Daniel remained, bloodied, his arm broken, his vision blurred. But instead of retreating, he crawled forward, planting charges across the enemy's supply line. The explosion that followed did not only destroy the alien force, it carved his name into the whispers of survivors. The boy from Earth had fought like a storm. Stories like this were not told in alien councils. They were not shown on holoscreens. Aliens only broadcasted images of humanity's defeat, never of their courage. They mocked humans as fragile, but Daniel remembered the mother who shielded her child from flames with her own body, the miner who dug survivors out of collapsed tunnels with bare hands, the medic who refused to abandon the wounded even when the enemy drew near. These were the faces of humanity's truth, unseen by the galaxy, but carved into Daniel's soul. He remembered the night when he lost his closest friend, Marcus. They were both young then, guarding a small outpost hidden in the icy wastelands of Europa. The enemy came in swarms, and Marcus stood his ground while Daniel led the others to safety. By the time Daniel returned, Marcus was gone, buried under the bodies of those he had taken down. Daniel had screamed into the empty sky, but later, as the years passed, he realized Marcus had not died in vain. He had bought them time, given them hope. That was the human way, not strength of body, but strength of sacrifice. Walking down the silent streets of the alien city, Daniel carried these memories like weapons, sharper than any blade, stronger than any armor. To the aliens, he was a relic, a representative of a dying species. To himself, he was the keeper of truth, the witness to countless acts of courage. They laughed. Because they did not know, They mocked because they had never bled as humans bled. They called humanity weak because they mistook scars for failure, when in truth, scars were proof of survival. The soldier's past was not only his own story, it was the story of his people, and it lived in every step he took. Every battle scar on his body carried the weight of countless lives. Every silence he kept was filled with the voices of those who had fallen. He did not need to shout in the council chamber. His silence carried the power of memory, a weight heavier than their laughter. Daniel paused at the edge of the city, looking. Up at the stars, he knew the war was coming, and he knew the aliens would see only what they wanted to see. But soon, the galaxy would witness what he had always known. Humanity was not fragile. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was a storm, waiting to break, and when it broke, the galaxy would never forget. The challenge. Accepted. The following day, the Great Council gathered again, their chamber glowing with the shifting lights of alien technology. Each species sat in its designated circle, banners of their empires hanging from the ceiling like reminders of conquest and pride. The hall was filled with the same scornful laughter as before, for the subject of humanity remained a source of amusement. They mocked the fragility of human lungs, the weakness of their bones, the short span of their lives. The words echoed again like poison, but this time the atmosphere felt different, for the human had spoken once, and silence had followed him like a shadow. The council remembered his promise. An alien general, massive and armored like a living tank, rose from his seat. His voice thundered across the chamber. "Enough of words, human," he growled. "If your kind claims strength, then prove it. We will not listen to riddles or speeches. We want to see your power with our own eyes." The other aliens cheered in agreement, pounding the stone tables with fists and claws. Their voices merged into one demand: challenge, challenge, challenge. Daniel stood calmly at the center of the hall, his eyes lifting to meet the towering general's glare. His voice was steady, without anger. "You seek proof," he said. "Then I will give it. I will face any one of you here, not with armies, not with fleets, but with what one human carries inside himself: courage, will, and the refusal to bow." His words echoed like fire in the still air, and though many aliens laughed again, some shifted uncomfortably, for they felt no hesitation in his voice, only certainty. The council roared with approval at his boldness. The alien general slammed his clawed hand against his chest. "Then I accept. I will break you before their eyes, human, and when I am finished, the galaxy will see you as nothing but dust." The council cheered louder, believing the contest already decided, for in their eyes, no human could defeat such a titan. No fragile body could stand against scales of iron and arms like weapons. The rules were set quickly. The duel would not be to the death, but to submission. Yet everyone knew mercy was not in the aliens' blood. If Daniel lost, humanity's shame would be sealed before the galaxy. If he won, a thought few considered. It would shake the foundation of their laughter. The time was chosen, one rotation of the moons, and the entire chamber buzzed with excitement. That night Daniel sat alone in his quarters, a small room provided for his stay. His mind was calm, his breathing steady, but the memories returned once more. He had fought against stronger foes before, enemies larger, faster, deadlier. He had lost friends and carried their weight. He had seen humanity underestimated countless times, and he had seen that arrogance crumble before the resilience of his people. He knew this challenge was not about victory through brute strength, for no human could match the general's raw power. It was about endurance, about using every drop of wit, strategy, and patience that his kind had mastered through suffering. He sharpened his blade, though he doubted it would pierce the general's armor. He checked his old pistol, though he knew its charge was low. These weapons were not his true strength. His true weapon was the ability to think differently, to turn weakness into a shield and pain into fuel. Humanity's greatest victories had always come when they were cornered, desperate, and forced to find a way where none existed. When the day came, the council chamber was transformed into an arena, a wide circle of polished stone, shields of energy glowing to protect the spectators. Thousands of alien eyes gleamed with hunger for spectacle. Above, banners of empires waved, symbols of dominance hanging like predators over prey. The alien general stepped forward, towering, his body covered in plated armor that grew from his flesh. His roar shook the hall. "Prepare to be broken, human!" Daniel stepped into the circle with quiet steps. His uniform was plain, his weapons modest. He looked smaller than ever in comparison, but his eyes burned with a calm fire. He stood tall and unflinching, as if the weight of 1,000 human souls walked beside him. The crowd jeered, throwing curses, laughing at the sight of the tiny soldier facing the giant. But somewhere in that storm of voices, a hush began to grow, for the human did not tremble, not even for a breath. The elder of the council raised his hand and his voice rang out, "The duel begins!" The shield around the arena flared, locking the two opponents inside. Silence fell. Heavy! The alien general charged with a roar, each step like thunder, claws raised to crush bone and shred flesh. Daniel did not move at first, his eyes locked on the approaching monster. Then, with the calm of a man who had faced death many times, he shifted, stepping aside at the last moment, letting the general's power crash into the stone floor. The crowd gasped, their laughter stilled for a heartbeat. Daniel's voice carried across the arena, calm yet sharp. Strength is not only in the arm, it is in the mind. It is in the will. That is the strength of humanity. His words hung in the air as the general snarled and prepared to strike again. The challenge had begun, not only of body, but of truth. A lone soldier standing for his entire race, and in the eyes of the galaxy, the first cracks of doubt began to appear. Humanity was mocked, but soon they would see. The storm was coming, the battle of wits. The arena shook as the alien general advanced again, his heavy footsteps pounding the stone floor like the strike of war drums. His massive frame cast a shadow over Daniel, his armored arms gleaming under the lights of the chamber. The crowd roared, chanting the general's name, confident that the human would be broken within moments. Yet, in the center of the arena, Daniel stood unmoved, his eyes sharp and calculating, every muscle coiled not with panic, but with patience. The general struck again, his claws slashing with terrifying force. The air itself cracked under the speed of his strike. Daniel twisted his body, letting the claws whistle past his chest by inches. He moved with the grace of a predator, not faster, but smarter. His feet carried him in patterns the general did not expect, every step conserving energy, every dodge forcing the alien to burn his strength. The council chamber filled with the sound of scraping claws and shattered stone as the alien's attacks landed on everything except the human. The crowd grew restless. They had expected a quick and bloody display. Instead, they saw the human slipping away from death again and again. Some jeered, accusing him of cowardice. Others leaned forward, curiosity in their glowing eyes. For every time the general attacked, the human studied him, watched the angle of his strikes, the pause in his breathing, the slight lag in his left arm where old scars slowed his movements. Daniel was not fighting the general's body, he was fighting his weaknesses. Finally, the alien roared in frustration, swinging with both arms in a crushing strike meant to end it all. Daniel dropped to the ground, rolling beneath the strike, and as he rose, he drove his elbow into a gap in the general's armor near the ribs. The blow was small, but the general staggered, not from pain, but from shock. No one had ever touched him in combat, not like this. The crowd gasped, and Daniel's voice carried across the arena like steel. Strength without control is weakness. Power without wisdom is nothing. Humanity knows this truth. The general roared louder, enraged. His strikes grew faster, heavier, but also sloppier. His anger was his enemy. Daniel knew it. He circled like a wolf around a wounded beast, his eyes reading every movement. He waited until the perfect moment came, when the alien lunged with reckless force. Daniel sidestepped and used the alien's momentum to push him into the energy shield that surrounded the arena. Sparks exploded as the general's armored body smashed against it. His roar of fury shook the chamber. The council erupted in noise. Some shouted in disbelief, others laughed nervously, never expecting the human to last this long, let alone drive the general into the barrier. For the first time, doubt flickered in their eyes. Daniel's breathing was heavy, sweat dripping from his brow, but his gaze was unbroken. His body bore the marks of near misses, shallow cuts and bruises, but his spirit was unshaken. He remembered every lesson carved into him by years of war. On Earth, when stronger enemies came, humans learned to hide, to strike when the enemy least expected. On the colonies, when weapons failed, they used tools, rocks, even their bare hands. Humanity had never won by being the strongest. They had won by refusing to surrender, by turning weakness into strategy. That was what he carried now, the unyielding will of a species that had survived the impossible. The general charged again. His fury burning brighter than reason, Daniel set his stance, his hand gripping his blade not to kill, but to guide, at the last moment. He stepped aside and slashed across the exposed joint of the general's leg. The blade sparked but cut deep enough to stagger him. The giant fell to one knee, his roar echoing like thunder. The crowd fell silent, stunned. For the first time, in living memory, the mighty general had been brought down in front of witnesses. Daniel stood tall, his chest heaving, his voice steady. "You call us weak because you see only our bodies. You call us fragile because you do not understand our will. But now you see, even the smallest of us can bring down the greatest of you, not with power, but with resolve. That is the strength of humanity." The silence in the arena was heavy. The laughter that had filled the chamber in the beginning was gone, replaced by whispers, uneasy and uncertain. The alien general struggled to rise, his eyes burning with rage and shame. He looked at the human before him, smaller, bloodied, yet standing with unshaken pride, and in that moment, for the first time, fear stirred within him. The elder of the council rose slowly, his silver horns gleaming. His voice carried across the chamber, deep and cold. "This is not finished, human. You may have endured one challenge, but endurance is not victory. Prove to us not once, but again and again, that your kind is worthy of respect." His words trembled with something the council had not expected: hesitation. For the first time, the aliens had seen a human fight not as prey, but as an equal. Daniel's gaze never faltered. He nodded once, his voice calm. "I will, and when I am done, you will never mock humanity again." The crowd erupted in chaos, voices clashing. Some still shouted insults. Others demanded more proof. But in every corner of the chamber, a single thought lingered like a shadow. Humanity was not as weak as they believed, and as Daniel stood in the center of the arena, his heart heavy but unbroken, he knew the war of truth had only just begun, humanity's hidden strength. The arena remained filled with voices long after the duel ended. The alien general limped away in silence, his pride shattered, and though the council tried to dismiss the event as chance or luck, the whisper of doubt had already spread among the gathered species. They had witnessed something they could not deny: a human standing unbroken against a titan. It was not brute strength that had carried him, but something else, something the galaxy did not yet understand. Captain Daniel knew it, and he was ready to show them when the council gathered again. The following day, the atmosphere was tense. The aliens still sneered, but their laughter carried less weight than before. For the first time, the image of human fragility had been cracked. The elder of the council stood tall, his silver horns glinting, and demanded, "You proved yourself in combat, human, but one duel does not change the truth of your kind. Show." Us, if you dare. The strength you claim your people carry. Daniel stepped forward into the center of the hall, his body still sore from the duel, bruises marking his skin like badges of war. He did not raise his weapon, nor did he speak of battles alone. Instead, he spoke of stories, the quiet truths the galaxy never cared to see. His voice was calm but carried the weight of thousands of lives. "You think our strength is in warriors alone," he began, "but humanity's greatest strength has never been only its soldiers. Our power lies in ordinary people who rise when the world tries to break them." The chamber stirred, some aliens scoffing, others leaning closer as Daniel continued. "On Earth, when our cities were bombed into ash, mothers carried their children through the fire, shielding them with their own bodies. Fathers dug through ruins with their bare hands to free survivors. Farmers shared their last grain with neighbors, though they were starving themselves. This is the truth of humanity, not in weapons but in sacrifice, not in muscle but in spirit." His words echoed, and though many aliens laughed, others listened. He told them of the miners of Titan who kept digging through collapsing tunnels, pulling one another out, though the ground itself was falling apart. He told them of a medic named Elara who had stayed with the wounded during an alien raid, refusing to flee, whispering hope into the ears of the dying until her voice was silenced forever. He spoke of a child on Mars who ran back into flames to save her younger brother. Her small hands burned, her body frail, yet her will greater than any weapon. The aliens shifted in their seats, unease spreading. They had seen humans fall in battle, but they had never heard these stories, because humans never boasted of them. They carried their pain quietly. Daniel's voice grew steadier, each word a blade cutting through arrogance. "You measure strength only in how hard you strike, in how long you live. But humanity's strength is in how many times we rise after. Being struck down, in how we live even when we know death is certain. We endure, we rebuild, we remember. That is why you fear us, even as you laugh." Silence spread through the chamber, the weight of his words pressing into the air. Some aliens lowered their eyes, unwilling to meet his gaze. Others clenched their fists, fighting the truth stirring in their minds. One finally shouted, "These are tales, sentimental stories. They prove nothing." But his voice was weaker than before, drowned by the silence of those who felt the pull of Daniel's words. Daniel raised his scarred hand, turning it so the light struck the old burns and cuts that mapped his skin. "These are not tales," he said. "These are marks of what I have lived, of what every human carries. We are a people of scars, but scars are not weakness. They are proof that pain did not end us. They are proof that we stood again." The elder of the council leaned forward, his silver eyes narrowing. He studied Daniel for a long moment, and though his voice was sharp, there was a tremor of respect hidden in it. "You speak well, human, but the galaxy does not honor words. It honors power." Daniel's reply was firm, his voice carrying the strength of his entire race. "Then you will see power, not the power you expect, but the power that endures, the power that survives, the power that rebuilds from ashes and rises from graves. That is humanity, mocked, scarred, broken, yet unyielding. That is our hidden strength." The chamber trembled with silence, the weight of the moment pressing heavy upon the council. For the first time, no one laughed. For the first time, they saw the human not as prey, not as fragile, but as something else, something dangerous, not because of his weapons, but because of the truth he carried. Humanity had been underestimated, but the storm of revelation had only begun. The turning point. The council chamber was no longer filled with laughter. Instead, it was heavy with silence, a silence that weighed. On every alien present, they had expected the human to falter, to stumble, to break under the weight of their scorn. Yet he stood taller than ever, his words echoing in their minds, words that painted pictures of resilience and sacrifice that no warrior's roar could erase. The alien general, still nursing his wounded pride, glared from the shadows, his jaw clenched. His pride broken, but not his anger. He wanted to silence the human, to end this challenge before it grew into something larger. Yet the council was no longer united in mockery. Cracks had begun to form. Among the gathered species, whispers began to rise. One alien elder leaned close to another, murmuring, "He speaks of scars as strength. Perhaps he is not wrong." A younger alien, his eyes glowing with unease, whispered, "I saw it in his duel. He is smaller, weaker, yet he stood where others would have fallen." For every voice that still scoffed, another voice now hesitated, torn between arrogance and the undeniable truth that was beginning to grow in their hearts. The elder of the council raised his hand, his silver horns glinting under the light. "Human," he said with a voice that carried both curiosity and command. "You speak of survival, of endurance, of sacrifice, yet the galaxy honors victory, not scars. Why should your species be respected when you are still defeated again and again?" His words were sharp, and some nodded in agreement, clinging desperately to their belief in human weakness. Daniel stepped forward, the light falling across the scars on his face, scars that told their own story louder than any words. His voice was steady, low, yet powerful. "Because every defeat is not an end for us," he said. "Every loss teaches us. Every scar strengthens us. We have been crushed, enslaved, hunted, and still we rise. What you see as defeat is our training. What you see as scars are our lessons. Humanity does not break, it transforms, and when we transform, we are stronger than before." The words struck the chamber like thunder. The aliens shifted uneasily. Some lowered their gazes, remembering battles where humans had risen again after being thought destroyed, remembering colonies rebuilt in months after devastation, remembering fleets that returned stronger after annihilation. These memories stirred doubt in their arrogance, but not all accepted. A large reptilian warrior hissed, his fangs glinting. "Your words are smoke, human. You fight with emotion, not power. You speak of sacrifice, but sacrifice is weakness. If your people throw away their lives so easily, then you will vanish from the stars." His voice was filled with contempt, and many nodded, hoping his words would break the hold of the human's truth. Daniel's eyes hardened. His reply was like fire. "No," he said, "sacrifice is not weakness. It is the highest strength. It is choosing to give when nothing is left. Choosing to stand when standing means death. Choosing to protect others when survival means leaving them behind. That is what makes humanity dangerous. We do not fight only for ourselves. We fight for each other. That is a power none of you can destroy." The chamber was silent again. The reptilian warrior's sneer faltered, for he had no reply. Daniel's voice grew steadier, carried by the weight of 1,000 stories. "When my people fall, we rise together. When one dies, another takes his place. When a city burns, the survivors rebuild it. We are not endless because of numbers. We are endless because of spirit. Mock us if you dare. But understand this. Every scar, every loss, every death only forges us harder, until the day comes when you realize we are the storm you cannot stop." The council erupted into divided voices. Some aliens shouted that he lied, that he was nothing more than a relic clinging to false pride. Yet others, for the first time, stood in his defense. An elder with crystal skin rose slowly, her voice calm but firm. "Perhaps we should listen. Perhaps strength is not only in victories won, but in the spirit that refuses to surrender. I have fought humans before, and I remember their eyes. They were never afraid, even as they bled." The chamber shook with chaos, voices clashing, insults thrown, yet also defenses rising. Never before had the council been split over humanity. Never before had their mockery been met with such silence. Daniel stood alone in the center, but his presence filled the hall like fire. Some aliens feared him, others respected him, but none could ignore him. The elder with the silver horns raised his hand for silence once again. His gaze locked on Daniel, sharp and searching. "Human," he said slowly, "your words are seeds. They have taken root in some, but not in all. You stand on the edge of respect and rejection. What comes next will decide your place. Will your people rise in honor, or will they remain the galaxy's jest?" His words hung heavy. The turning point of the debate, Daniel's answer was quiet, but it carried the weight of every fallen human, every scar, every sacrifice. "We will rise," he said, "not because you grant us respect, but because it is who we are. You will see in the days to come that your laughter will fade, and in its place will be silence, the silence of awe, the silence of respect. Humanity will not ask for it. Humanity will earn it." The chamber fell into stillness. The council was no longer laughing. The turning point had come. The storm was gathering, and though many still clung to their arrogance, others had already begun to see the truth. The mockery of humanity was ending, and the revelation of its strength was only beginning. The truth revealed. The council chamber stood in silence, the air heavy like the calm before a storm. The aliens, who once roared with laughter, now shifted uneasily in their seats, divided between disbelief and the stirring shadow of respect. Captain Daniel stood at the center of it all, his uniform torn, his face marked with scars, yet his presence radiated strength. He was not a conqueror with armies, nor a king with crowns. He was a soldier, one man who carried the weight of his entire race on his shoulders, and in that moment, the galaxy began to understand what that truly meant. The elder with silver horns, the one who had led the mockery with the cold sharpness of his tongue, leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. "You have spoken of scars, of sacrifice, of resilience," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. "But words, however stirring, are still only words. Tell us, human, why should your people be remembered? Why should the galaxy fear you, respect you, or even acknowledge you?" The question lingered in the air, cutting into the silence. Thousands of eyes burned into Daniel's figure. Some expected him to falter at last, others hoped he would break, yet he did not. He stepped forward into the full light, his shadow stretching across the polished floor, his voice calm and steady but filled with fire. "Because you laugh at us not out of truth, but out of fear," he said. "You mock us because you know, deep inside, that there is something in us you cannot destroy. You mistake our scars for weakness, when in truth they are warnings. You mistake our short lives for fragility, when in truth they make us fearless. You mistake our defeats for endings, when in truth they are beginnings." The aliens stirred, some whispering, some glaring. Daniel's voice grew louder, each word striking like a blade. "You have seen us bleed, you have seen us fall, but what you do not understand is that every time we fall, we rise again, stronger, fiercer, more united. You call us fragile, but fragility breeds courage. You call us broken, but broken things cut deeper. You call us weak, but weakness teaches us how to endure, and endurance, more than power, is what wins wars, it is what shapes legends, it is what defines humanity." A hush spread through the chamber. The words carried not as boast, but as truth carved into stone. The aliens who had fought humans in the past remembered battles where humans fought long after defeat was certain, where they stood their ground when retreat was the only logical choice. They remembered eyes filled not with fear, but with a fire they could not extinguish, and for the first time they understood what they had mocked. Daniel raised his scarred hand, his voice now softer, but cutting even deeper. "You ask why the galaxy should remember us," he said, "because we will not let you forget. You may burn our cities, but we will rebuild them. You may kill our soldiers, but more will rise in their place. You may bury us in the ashes of defeat, but from those ashes we will stand again. Humanity is not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most powerful, but we are the most relentless. We are the storm that never ends, the flame that never dies. The elder of the council tried to speak, but his voice faltered. For the first time in his long life, he could not find words to dismiss the human. The laughter that had filled the chamber was gone, replaced by something heavier, something unspoken but undeniable, a silence that carried the weight of respect. Then an old alien warrior, one who had fought in the first war against Earth, rose slowly to his feet. His body was covered in scars, his eyes tired but sharp. His voice was low, but it carried a cross, the chamber like thunder. "I fought humans once," he said. "I thought them weak, I thought them fragile. But when the battle ended and I stood among the bodies, I realized something. They never begged, they never surrendered, even in death. Their eyes defied me. They are not weak, they are dangerous, because they will not stop." The council erupted in whispers. Some shouted denial, others murmured agreement. The chamber was no longer united, the foundation of mockery shattered beyond repair. The elder of the council leaned back slowly. His silver eyes narrowed. He saw what had happened. He saw what Daniel had done, not with armies, not with weapons, but with truth. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. Daniel looked at them all, his gaze steady, his final words cutting through the storm of voices. "You mocked us because you did not understand, but now you do. And whether you respect us or not, whether you fear us or not, know this: humanity will endure. Humanity will rise. Humanity will never bow. That is our truth. That is our strength." The chamber was silent, utterly silent. For the first time in history, the laughter of the galaxy was gone, replaced by the weight of realization. In the eyes of the council, the human soldier no longer stood alone. Behind him stood an entire race, scarred but unbroken, mocked but undefeated, fragile in body but eternal in spirit. The truth had been revealed, and it would echo through the stars for generations to come.
Thank you for joining Eternal Human Spirit, where humanity always rises again.